The first Soviet tank to roll through Berlin in 1945 wasn't just carrying soldiers. It was carrying a secret that would change the nature of war forever, and most people still don't know what it was. This isn't a story about guns or bombs. It's about the invisible edge, the kind of innovation that doesn't announce itself until it's already won, and it began in a frozen factory where engineers were told to do the impossible. In 1941, the Soviet Union was losing badly. German forces had advanced hundreds of kilometers in just weeks, capturing cities, destroying supply lines, and obliterating entire divisions. The Red Army was in retreat. But in the Ural Mountains, far from the front lines, something strange was happening. Engineers were sketching designs on scraps of paper. Welders were working 20-hour shifts, and a new kind of weapon was being born, not from desperation, but from clarity. What they built wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to intimidate. It was designed to survive. And that made all the difference. The T-34 tank became legendary not because it had the biggest gun or the thickest armor, but because it had sloped armor, a simple geometric change that deflected shells instead of absorbing them. It was faster, cheaper to produce, and more reliable in freezing temperatures than anything the Germans had. And it rolled off assembly lines by the thousands. But the T-34 was just the beginning. What most people don't realize is that Soviet innovation during World War II wasn't about brute force. It was about efficiency, psychology, and asymmetry. They didn't try to outgun their enemies. They tried to outthink them, and in doing so, they created 5 technologies that didn't just change battles. They changed the rules of warfare itself. This is the story of those 5 innovations, and why they still matter today. The second weapon wasn't a weapon at all, it was a sound. The Katyusha rocket launcher, nicknamed Stalin's organ by German soldiers, didn't have the accuracy of traditional artillery. But it didn't need to. What it had was terror. Imagine standing in a trench and hearing a low, haunting whistle growing louder and louder, followed by a barrage of explosions that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The psychological impact was devastating. Soldiers couldn't predict where the next strike would land, and that unpredictability became a weapon in itself. The Katyusha could fire dozens of rockets in seconds, saturating an entire area before enemy forces could respond. It was cheap, mobile, and could be mounted on trucks, making it nearly impossible to target. But here's what made it truly revolutionary. It wasn't designed to destroy enemy positions. It was designed to destroy enemy morale, and it worked. German officers reported entire battalions refusing to advance after a Katyusha strike, not because of casualties, but because of fear. The third innovation was quieter, deadlier, and it came from the sky. The Ilyushin Il-2 Sturmovik was the most produced military aircraft in history, with over 36,000 units built. It was slow, heavily armored, and specifically designed for one mission: ground attack. Pilots called it the flying tank because it could absorb tremendous amounts of damage and keep flying. But what made it terrifying was its precision. It could destroy convoys, supply depots, and even tanks with surgical accuracy. And it changed how wars were fought. Before the Sturmovik, air support was a luxury, reserved for major offensives. After it, air support became expected. Infantry units relied on it. Tank commanders coordinated with it. It created a new doctrine, combined arms warfare, where every branch of the military worked together in real time. The Sturmovik didn't just support ground troops, it integrated with them. And that integration became the blueprint for modern military strategy. The fourth weapon was invisible until it was too late. Soviet military intelligence, known as SMERSH, operated with a level of sophistication that shocked Western observers. They didn't just gather information, they planted it, they manipulated it. They turned the enemy's own intelligence systems against them. Entire German operations were compromised before they even began, not because of leaks, but because of carefully constructed deceptions. The Soviets understood something fundamental. Information is not just power, it's a weapon that can be aimed. And they aimed it with precision. During Operation Bagration in 1944, the Soviets convinced the Germans that the main offensive would come from the south. They moved fake equipment, sent false radio signals, and even leaked documents. The Germans reinforced the wrong positions. When the real attack came from the north, it obliterated an entire army group. The Germans lost more soldiers in Bagration than in Stalingrad, not because they were outgunned, but because they were outplayed. The fifth innovation wasn't a machine, it was a philosophy. The Soviets pioneered the concept of deep operations, a military doctrine that focused on breaking through enemy lines and striking deep into their rear, disrupting supply chains, communications, and command structures. It wasn't about holding ground, it was about collapsing systems, and it required a level of coordination and speed that had never been attempted before. Entire armies moved in waves, each one exploiting the chaos created by the one before it, and it worked devastatingly well. The Germans were masters of tactical warfare, winning individual battles with superior training and equipment, but they couldn't adapt to the scale and speed of Soviet deep operations. They found themselves constantly reacting, never able to stabilize a front line, never able to predict where the next strike would come. The Soviets didn't just win battles, they won entire campaigns by making the battlefield itself unpredictable. What surprised me the most wasn't just how a detailed historical atlas improved my experience with understanding military innovations, but how everything started to feel different once I switched to the right one. I didn't expect such a clear change, and honestly, I tested more than a few before finding what actually worked. This isn't a promo or sponsorship, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for me. I'll leave the link below, in case you want to dig into it yourself and see what I mean. These 5 innovations didn't just change World War II, they changed how we think about conflict, strategy, and innovation itself. The lesson isn't about tanks or rockets, it's about seeing problems differently. The Soviets were outmatched in almost every way at the start of the war, but they didn't try to compete on the same terms. They redefined the terms. They looked for asymmetric advantages. And they found them. That mindset is still relevant today. Whether you're building a business, solving a complex problem, or just trying to navigate uncertainty, the principle is the same. Don't compete where you're weakest, innovate where others aren't looking. Find the edge that nobody expects and use it relentlessly. The story of Soviet innovation during World War II isn't just history, it's a blueprint, and it's still being used, every single day, in fields you wouldn't expect. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.